Thank you, Sandy. Thank you so much. This is an amazingly big crowd, and I'm thrilled to be here. And there's no group that I would rather speak with than almost 2,000 women and a few good, evolved men about my favorite topic, which is women and power. And helping to empower women to be courageous and take risks and embrace each other's success. And I think that I've been here since last night, and I'm really impressed with the network of support, of mutual support that I'm seeing here. So brava to you, to all of you. I'm going to start out by talking. We're going to talk for 20 minutes. I actually wish we had a chance for Q&A. I am going to start out by asking you one question, and I actually can see fairly well. So, the word power. How many people out there are comfortable with the word power and comfortable saying, I am powerful? Let me see a show of hands. Okay. How many people are not really comfortable with the word power and would not be comfortable saying, I am powerful? Okay. A lot of you are not raising your hands, which is either confusion or fear or something. But anyway, I think the discomfort outweighed the comfort. So we're going to work on that, and not everything I tell you is going to be optimistic or particularly fortifying, but hopefully it will be encouraging. And it will give a little guide to about how to be more powerful. So let me just give you a little bit of background on me, very briefly. I've been at Fortune for 27 years, since 1984. I came to Fortune magazine from Washington, D.C., moved to New York at a time long before we knew about the internet. And the business world, especially the Fortune 500 world, the 500 largest companies in America, it was basically a world of white men without facial hair. There weren't even interesting young guys running companies that we talked about. I actually was lucky enough to fall into covering the consumer products companies. So actually ConAgra is one of the companies that I wrote about, and I knew Mike Harper, and all right. And it was actually the best training ground back then, because those were the sexy companies back then. Those were the academy companies that, kids coming out of business school went to. Well, in the mid-90s, we actually started writing about women. There were a few interesting women on the scene. I did a couple of cover stories. They got a lot of buzz, sold really well on the newsstand. We decided in 1998 to start doing a regular act in the magazine, an annual act, actually ranking the top women in business, in American business and in international business. And we were the first magazine. We were the first global publication ever to rank women, not just list women, but rank women. And my argument at the time, when they asked me to kind of spearhead this, was that guys will never read it. You tell me, guys, if this is true. Guys will never read it if we don't rank them. Guys are into status and size and all that, and it's true, right? Right? Yeah. Well, a lot of it comes from childhood, right? From all the way up from being a kid and, sports scores. And so more power to you for that. It was because of the guys that we decided to rank women. And frankly, it was one of the best things that we could have done. And, I'll just give you a sort of headline about the good news. The Fortune Most Powerful Women list, 13 years later, is now Fortune's second biggest and most valuable franchise after the Fortune 500, which says a lot about the power of women, the interest in women in business, and the passion of companies and boards to promote women, because they now use this list as, they tear it out, they save it, and they use it to recruit. And the most inspiring thing to me is that young women truly, look at this and look for role models and guidance. So what happened, though, is when we started this in 1998, and basically it's a list based on 4 criteria: the size and importance of the woman's business in the global economy, the health and direction of the business, the arc of the woman's career, how quickly she's moved up and where she's likely to go from here, and something we call social and cultural influence, which is what puts Oprah Winfrey high on the list, even though her business is not the size of #1 Indra Nooyi's business, which is PepsiCo. She's the CEO of PepsiCo. So Oprah is was number 6 on the 2010 list. So when I started doing this, and I did the first cover story in 1998, women at the top of the list, and I would say most of the women who got on this list of 50 top women were not comfortable at all with this word power. So I went to see this woman at Lucent who no one outside of the telecom industry had ever heard of. She had had one business story written about her in her whole career in Investor's Business Daily, a fairly obscure publication. We named her #1 on that very first list in 1998. Shout out if you know who that first #1 most powerful woman was. Does anybody know? Yeah, Carly Fiorina, who literally, seriously, she was really unknown. And we put her on the cover, made her #1. Lucent was very hot at the time. She was running the biggest division. She got the HP job, the CEO job at Hewlett Packard the following summer. She gritted through her, she just gritted her teeth every time I wanted to talk to her about power. And she didn't like being on a women's list, first of all. She wanted to be on a list with the boys. But she just, And I remember one time I asked her, how do you view your power? This is when she still had the Hewlett Packard job, and she was ultimately fired from that by the board. And she said, and I will always remember this quote. I love it, and it says everything about sort of what she was up against. She said, "My strength is my strength, but it can also be a weakness." We'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. So Meg Whitman, the CEO of eBay, succeeded her when Carly got into trouble at HP. We named Meg Whitman #1 on the most powerful women list. And Meg is kind of the opposite of Carly. She's very, not strident, more like kind of like a mom, and the people at eBay actually called her mom. She was not comfortable with power. She just really didn't want to embrace the word because that would go against the eBay democratic ethic. And then there was Oprah, who I talked to that first year, and she loathed the word power. And then I did a cover story about her, the first and until last year only business story that Oprah ever sat down to do, because she didn't like being portrayed as a businesswoman. She thought it separated her from the people, and she really, really, really didn't like the word power. And she told me that when I went to see her, actually 5 days before 9/11 in 2001. And we ended up holding the story because we couldn't put her on the cover right after 9/11. And I went back to see her in January of 2002, and she completely was, like, how should I think about my mission now that the world has changed? But she still wasn't comfortable with the word power. And we did a cover story called Oprah Inc. back in 2002. So these top women are certainly reflective, I think, of how women in general feel about power. It's a discomforting and kind of potentially poisonous thing. For one thing, women in general tend to think about power horizontally compared to the way men typically think about power. And I know this because over the 15 years really, 2 years before we started the Most Powerful Women list, I did my first cover story on women, powerful women. So for the past 15 years, I have asked hundreds of women, how do you define power? And I've asked dozens and dozens of kind of masters of the universe men, how do you think about power? What is power to you? And inevitably, the men talk about getting people to do things that they don't want to do. That's a classic answer. And women tend to talk about influence and spreading it broadly. And we as women tend to have, frankly, more complexity in our lives, and we are more, we think about more things during every day. We don't compartmentalize as well. Women have broader views of success and broader ideas about what fulfills them. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, especially today, I would argue that climbing the ladder is a more foolish idea than ever. The world is incredibly unpredictable. How on earth do you know what the hot job is at your company? What it's going to be next year? And the system, the structure is so not there for so many of us in so many companies, in so many industries, that you don't even know if the company is going to be there next year. So it's, with the world changing so fast and unpredictably, I would say that flexibility is your most important asset, personally, and having peripheral vision and looking at the opportunities over here, and thinking of your career more as a jungle gym instead of a ladder is the smarter thing to do. So, given that this horizontal view of power and careers is not such a bad thing, I'm constantly amazed at the number of women on our list, our Most Powerful Women list, who have moved on from very powerful corporate positions at a prime age, early 50s, to do completely different things. I mean, when Meg Whitman left eBay a few years ago, she could have, she spent 10 years at eBay. She built eBay. She had a rough ride at the end, but she, left that job as a very strong CEO. She could have gotten a bigger job in corporate America, but now she decided to do something completely different. She decided to run for governor. And I did a cover story, Can Meg Whitman Save California? Back in March of 2009. And of course, the answer is no. She lost to Jerry Brown. And at the same time, Carly Fiorina, coincidentally, was running for the US Senate in California. She lost to a woman, Barbara Boxer. But it's interesting to me that these women, Women, I think, tend to be more sort of open to different kinds of reinvention. Just got the news this morning that another woman from our list who has tried to reinvent recently, Kathy Black, who was the CEO of Hearst magazines and one of the most powerful, prominent women in the media industry. She, a few months ago, Mayor Bloomberg in New York named her head of New York City schools, chancellor of New York City schools. She got pushed out today. And that's a shocker. She was in the job just a few months. Her approval rating, public approval rating, was below 20%. Which brings us to one of the reasons that I believe that no matter how much we hope, and I don't mean to be terribly discouraging here, but no matter how much we hope, we will never, ever, ever have parity at the top of corporate America. And let me just go through a few of the reasons. Besides the different view of power, the more horizontal view for women versus more vertical for men, there is, let's face it, a narrower band of acceptable behavior for women. What happened to Meg Whitman when she ran for governor of California? What happened to Carly Fiorina when she ran for the Senate? What happened to Linda McMahon in Connecticut when she ran for the US Senate? All three of those women lost. All three of those women had very high-level corporate experience. What happened was that they were kind of put on a pedestal, very public pedestal, and criticized more harshly for everything that they did. And they were so in the scrutinizing spotlight. And not only that, they did better with male voters than with female voters. Women are harsher on powerful women than the guys tend to be. And that's something that we really kind of need to get over, I think. Mary Robinson mentioned during our breakout session that a Madeleine Albright quote, which is, "There's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women." So there's this other phenomenon that is happening. I'm not even going to talk about the glass ceiling because you know about the glass ceiling, and it exists in a lot of places with managements that do not want to give women an equal chance. But I'm here to bring, sort of a few new ideas. So there's this other theory called the glass cliff, which I've seen quite a few times, and it's really, really interesting. And there are very well-intentioned managements at many companies that, in pursuit of diversity goals, promote women ahead of their abilities. I talked about it actually last year in a story that I did about Lehman Brothers. Biggest bankruptcy in history, 2008. Until a few months before Lehman went bankrupt, the chief financial officer there was a fairly young, early 40s, very smart, very attractive woman named Erin Callan. She was, for a brief moment, by some arguments, the most powerful woman on Wall Street. And she got pushed out 3 months before Lehman went under in October of 2008. But this was an example of a management. Lehman was not good with women. They never had a very senior woman in their management, and they really wanted to get there fast. And they plucked Erin and made the argument, you got to do this, it'll be good for you, it'll be good for Lehman Brothers, it'll be good for Wall Street. And she was very high profile, and she fell. And I admit that we in the press are part of the problem. We put these women on the pedestal, cast the spotlight, and then when they fall, we cast them in the spotlight again. But what happens is, it's like, see, a woman, put a woman ahead. And it stereotypes women. When they fail very publicly. We need to get past that. And then there's the fact that women are just not as adept at promoting themselves as guys generally are. I can't tell you the number of women on our most powerful women list who have been offered promotions and say, and have said, really? Are you sure? I mean, we're talking about like Ursula Burns, the CEO of Xerox, on down. And I have to admit that I was offered a promotion once in my career at Fortune and turned it down, and then was offered it again two years later, and I took it. But it was a title thing. It was like, I didn't want the title. And, you know, for a lot of women, the second ask doesn't come. So women tend to be more risk-averse with their careers. Sheryl Sandberg, the COO of Facebook, said to me recently, she said, women tend to be as good at risk-taking when it comes to doing a deal or building a product, but not in their careers. And Jean I'm not sure how to say her name, Stothert, who's on the Omaha City Council, only woman on the Omaha City Council, she was just in our last session, and she was saying when she asks women why they don't run for office, for public office, why don't they run? Fear of failure. So we got to get more brave with our careers. I have just a few solutions in my last 5 minutes, 3 solutions. Number 1, don't leave before you leave. This is a quote from Sheryl Sandberg. Sheryl, as I said, is the COO of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg's number 2. She is probably the fastest rising woman over the years on our most powerful women list. She was the top woman at Google. She moved to Facebook a few years ago. She's zipped up the list. She's now number 16 on the list, and I assure you she will be moving up this year. She called me a couple of years ago and said, I want to write this piece. I'll do it for you if you want it, called Don't Leave Before You Leave. And I said, what does that mean? And she said, it's driving me crazy with young women at Facebook who I offer them great opportunities or promotions, and they tell me, well, I'm planning to have a family in a couple of years, or I'm going to have a baby, and I have no idea when, but they're contemplating it, and they pass up the opportunity. She calls it leaning back. And when you lean back and don't go for it, you end up with a boring and stifling job. And she took the Facebook job right after she had her second child. And she said to herself, am I crazy? But she did it. And she has no regrets. So I actually just was at Facebook last week in Silicon Valley, and I saw Sheryl, and she said, part 2 of this, Don't Leave Before You Leave, is coming out in the New York Times Magazine, I think this Sunday. So if you read the New York Times, watch for that. Number 2, we need to encourage more women entrepreneurs. Women start businesses at a rate equal or greater than men, but they don't build businesses at the rate that men do. And there are basically 3 reasons. Women don't dream as big. Women don't fundraise as big, as well. It takes women a lot more tries at getting equity and debt financing than it does the average guy, Blame the woman for not promoting themselves as well, or blame the system. Either way, they don't fundraise as well. And then there is this basic fact that women do sell themselves short. So we've tried to go after that community. We created an award called Most Powerful Women Entrepreneurs. This will be the 3rd year. We select 10 across the country and bring them to the summit. My favorite man in Omaha happens to be the only man who comes every year to the Most Powerful Women's Summit, which is our annual event, which is 400 women. Peanuts compared to what you're doing here. But 400 women leaders, and it's invitation only. We have a wait list every year. It's a good problem to have, but it's a very hot ticket. But we invite one man every year, Warren Buffett, and he comes the whole time, sits in the front row, and I was with him yesterday after I saw Susan Jock, who is here, at Borsheim's, and I had lunch with Warren yesterday, and he was telling me the story about hiring Susan as CEO when she was head of sales at Borsheim's and had no idea that she was going to be asked by Warren to be the CEO, and didn't have that in her career plan. And he told me, and she told me, that after he called her to his office and said, I want to make you CEO, she spent about a half an hour giving him the reasons why she shouldn't be CEO. And then 2 months later, finally accepted, and 2 months later had to tell him that she was pregnant with her second child. And she said, are you sure you want to reverse your plan? And he said, no. He said, I don't care how many children you have, all the better. You know, you'll work harder. And what Susan has created is a very family-friendly company with practically all women at the top. And what happens when women start companies, and there's all sorts of research to prove this, and I don't mean to like stick it to the guys, but guys tend to start companies more to make a lot of money. You know why women start businesses generally? They create the companies that they want to work for. And that's basically what Susan has done at Borsheim's. And Warren and I at lunch were talking about this at lunch yesterday, and he said, those are the people that I want to invest in. Those people who come to work every day, not so much wanting to make money, but creating the companies that they want to work for. And Warren talks about painting your own painting every day, and that's what he does. And he wants to employ those kind of people. So I'm going to leave you with two other thoughts. My definition of power is that true power is personal power. The power that you have beyond your job description, your platform, your tenure, the power that will last if you lose your job tomorrow. So my favorite quote about power is something that Oprah told me when I asked her, actually many years ago, back in 2002, how do you define power? And she said, power is the ability to impact with purpose. I love that. Love that. And when I was visiting her in September of 2010 to do the second cover story, the only other business story that she's ever sat down to do, I told her, I said, you know how you define power? And I told her, the ability to impact with purpose. She goes, I said that? And I said, yeah. I said, it's good. And she goes, it is good. I like that. And I said to her, I can't believe I'm here. I said, after I did that story in 2002, you called me up and said, I will never, ever, ever do another business story. Even though she liked the story at the time. And she said, I don't want to be defined as a businesswoman. I said, so I'm back. I said, what's this all about? She said, I've accepted the fact that I'm a brand. I'm accepted the fact that I'm a business person. I'm starting my own network. Okay, you got me. I'm a business person. That's why I'm back. And I said, all right, that's great. You've come a long way. Good. Now I have you on the couch. And I said, I'm walking around Chicago, and I said, it's just unbelievable to me that on the cover of your magazine, you have the cover line, own your power. I said, you're the person who 8 years ago told me that you were so afraid of the word power. And here you're saying, she said, I've come to embrace it. She said, I get it. Power is not a bad thing. It can be a good thing, as long as you define it the way you really want to use it. So that is the message that I'm going to leave you with. Think about power your own way. And own your power, and we'll come a long way. Thank you very much.